This fountain stood at the heart of the University of Kansas for over a century. But after years of wear, neglect, and weather, it just wasn't holding together anymore. We were brought in to restore it, but the more we peeled back, the more we realized just how much was gone. The original lead had cracked and warped, the detail was fading, so we made the call. We'd recreate the entire thing in bronze. It took months of mold work, sculpting, casting, and fabrication. And by the end, it became one of the most meaningful projects we've ever worked on. Here's how it came together.
So the demo actually went very well. We were able to get every part of the fountain out in its complete integrity. It almost demoed itself. The welded seams of lead had burst on almost every seam, so we actually had very little demo to do. It kind of took itself apart. And like this was in the basin at one point. I believe this was a part of a repair job. That fountain had been repaired several times. Last repair being, I believe, with roofing patch, so it's been band-aided together over the years. We're going to come back in and utilize 304 stainless steel as the basin plate, and then we will build our bronze structure directly off of that.
The second part of the process was to determine what parts of the fountain we wanted to take molds of and what parts of the fountain, like the trim for instance, we took a section cut of, and we found it was easier to remake that kind of like they do in old plasterwork rather than take a mold of what was there, because it had so much historical damage that it's never going to be the new thing again. We decided to hand sculpt this profile that actually goes around the top of the basin, because the original had been so historically beat down that the detail wasn't there. One of the panels had an abundance of text. It's actually the only panel that had text, but we did have issues trying to lift the original text, but there were so many deformities in the text, and it had been so worn down over the years that we ended up actually copying the font and then remaking the font in wax, and then redistributing the letters on a wax panel and then casting that in whole to match essentially what was there originally, with way better detail than what we could have lifted off the original. One of the other aspects of the center column that we spent a lot of time not trying to recreate, because this was not an original piece to the fountain itself. This was an addition. They originally had sheep's head that had spouts coming out of it that had been ripped off over the years. Everyone was gone. The pineapple was gone. So the pineapple had to be completely remade. And we tried to do a lot of that through historical photo rework and scaling, but these were original to the shop, not to the fountain, and sculpted directly out of wax and then cast into bronze. And I think they came out great. Let's go look in the wax room real quick. This is where we have been doing our kind of makeshift ceramic shell work, where we have our wax and then we have a dipping tank, and we actually fabricated a larger dipping tank to put the parts into ceramic shell, and then you have several grades of silica sand. You start with the fine grade, and then as you accumulate dips on the parts, you move up to coarser and coarser silica sand. Here, for instance, is one of the full panels we had originally tried to cast, but we were having multiple failures with doing stuff in this scale. And again, it's probably more due to our foundry's process than the scale of this work itself, which is, it is a very large. I think this was 6 ingots of bronze to get one of these successful. We did get a couple successful castings, but in the end, we found that it was better to split this in half and do these in half panel parts. This is the panel, obviously this is the back, and along the side we had built-in vents all the way up and down. We redid that even in the smaller panels, and then we have a network of vents and gates along the back with our cups. So when we were pouring these, obviously this would be upside down and the cup would be elevated slightly, and a container of hot sand. We take these and we put them in our burnout oven, and we would get the shell to 1400 degrees and try to keep it there for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Probably could have spent a little longer in the burnout, but some of the issues we were having, especially in this part of the process, was the amount, the volume of bronze that we had coursing through this fixture would actually split this entire part along the edge. So we would have a lot of loss through the bottom sections of this, and we would have complete castings around the section closest to the cup. So we had to kind of reformat and rework until we got, exactly what we wanted, something workable at least out of the bronze. As far as the fabrication of the bronze after we had successful pours, it was very rudimentary fabrication. It's TIG welding with silicone bronze rod. There's a process called chasing that everybody that works in bronze fully understands, but you get a lot of pits in your original casting, and you have to go through and fill those with rod, sand them down, and then bring everything to a nice uniform finish, which we achieved with sandblasting towards the end of the process right before patina. For patina, so we had a few stages of sandblasting to prepare the surface of the bronze, and then our patina process. It was about 5 coats, a few different patina liquids, and a lot of heat and a lot of speed. So what we were trying to do, because it is such a big thing and we don't have a large enough patina room to do it in one go, we had to kind of make a makeshift area to do the patina in, and then make sure we had enough staff around to try to evenly heat and evenly patina, finish, wax, and seal the entire basin and the center column at one time, in one go. Because otherwise, if you get kind of a splotchy patina, you've only got a couple options. You could either sandblast it and bring it back to the base material, or you can try to over patina, which that's a slippery slope into just having a splotchy finish. So. Yeah, so install was probably the best part of this process, because we had spent months and months on mold making and fabrication, design, and a lot of the design aspects of the new parts of the fountain had gone back and forth between the architect and the donors that wanted to see this thing recreated and reinvented and revitalized. So when we finally got to the phases of install, we had a crane there, we brought it on a flatbed truck, and start to finish, I want to say the hardest part of the install was done in about 3.5 hours. For me, the fountain was a very impactful project to work on, just because it's something that has been a landmark for over 100 years, and with our help, this fountain will be there for at least 200 more years, unless students start getting sawzalls and grinders out to dismantle. I think it's got a long life ahead of it, and it's very cool. I've got young girls, and I'm not gonna push them to one school or the next, but maybe one of them ends up at KU and the Chi Omega sorority, and they can enjoy some of the work. I think it's kind of one thing in this whole line of work that I've really loved, is that I get to make stuff around the city or around the country, and then I get to revisit that at different points in my life, and making stuff truly well crafted so it lasts for generations, and then being able to come back to it and revisit it throughout your life has been very meaningful to me. So I hope this, well, I know this is going to be one of those projects. I want to say out there, I was not expecting YouTube to like us this much, but I am very thankful for the 10,000 subscribers we just hit. We'll continue to push content out there, and I hope you join along for the ride.